I pulled up to the curb, the Georgia sun still hanging stubbornly in the sky, the air thick with heat and the scent of overcooked charcoal. My hands gripped a Tupperware container of kale salad I knew no one would eat. Still, I made it. Wore the navy sundress that made me feel polished without trying too hard. But as I stepped onto the uneven lawn of my in-laws' backyard, I could already feel the first crack forming. "Trying a bit hard, huh?" Mallory's voice cut through the murmur of laughter and sizzling burgers. My sister-in-law's smile never reached her eyes. Kids dashed between the lawn chairs, shrieking. The grass had long since given up in patches, revealing dirt beaten down by too many gatherings like this. Smoke from the grill clouded the air, tangling in my hair as I nodded greetings. The laughter quieted just enough when I approached. I caught my name in passing, mumbled behind a cupped hand, followed by a soft chuckle. I smiled like I'd been trained to. Walked right past them, but inside, something curled tight in my chest. They always made me feel like a guest in a home that used to be mine. Jan. When we stepped inside, the cool hush of air conditioning felt like a barrier. The laughter from the backyard paused awkwardly, replaced by muffled voices in the dining room. I followed my husband past the kitchen, tray in hand, hoping carrying dishes would diffuse the tension. Instead, I watched his mother wave off my offer to wash, ordering someone else to fetch fresh plates. I set the tray down silently, heart pounding. The walls of that house proclaimed status, framed degrees, wedding portraits of siblings, displays of honorary plaques. I looked for a photo of me, but it was absent, even after years of marriage. The omission felt like a quiet erasure. Inside, I thought, how can you live here for years and still feel like you're knocking at the door? Later, Priscilla caught me in the hallway. She said she wanted to check in, the tone perfunctory. She asked, "So, still doing that influencer thing? Still faking it till you make it?" Her question was delivered like a test. I answered evenly, "I'm done pretending. I'm just doing what's mine." She tilted her head, eyes sharp. Then she referenced a loan I made her years ago. She said, "Funny how help is forgotten." I nodded and stepped away, silence carrying my dignity. I escaped to the children's room, where my niece sat coloring. She looked at me, puzzled. "Auntie, why does Priscilla say you lie about your job?" I knelt beside her and said softly, "Sometimes people don't understand what's different, but that doesn't make it else." The child's confusion mirrored my own youth, told to stay small, quiet, compliant. In that little voice, I heard the echo of the woman I once was. I made a silent vow. I would not shrink again. That night, the car ride home was heavy with unspoken riffs. He drove with his eyes on the road. I broke the silence. "Did I embarrass you today?" He sighed. "They don't get it, babe." "Why poke the bear?" My reply was calm but firm. Because quiet works for them, not for me. In that moment I saw, he's not malicious, just too afraid to fight. Back home, I booted up my laptop. The draft clips for the TV interview glowed on screen. I sharpened the edges, removed softness meant to appease, let raw lines ring. I uploaded a short teaser. Truth doesn't need permission to exist. I closed the laptop, fists loose at my sides. Then the ping, notification. My clip had been picked up by a national page. My chest tightened. They laughed. Let them choke on what comes next. 3 days had passed since the barbecue. I had gone back to routine, or at least the version of it I'd created to keep myself from disappearing. My morning started with emails and quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't give you peace, just space to feel everything you've pushed down. That evening, while organizing old content folders, my inbox pinged. Subject line, "Saw this and thought of you." It was from Danny, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. The clip was a polished news segment, well-lit, celebratory music, confident voiceovers, and there she was, Lauren Hayes, my ex-colleague, holding an award. The very award for a campaign I had pitched 2 years ago, right before I was told, "This isn't quite our brand tone." I sat there frozen. That was my pitch. My exact campaign concept, same title, same social strategy. But the date, June 5th, 2 years ago, tore something open. That week, I was pulling all-nighters. That week, my husband was working late more than usual. That week, my in-laws snickered through the walls while I built a future nobody believed in. They didn't laugh because the idea was bad. They laughed because it came from me. It pulled me under, not into rage, but into something deeper. Familiar. That ache when you're not even shocked anymore. Just tired of watching people steal from the woman you used to be before you doubted her into silence. I remembered meetings where I was talked over, family dinners where someone joked that my degree didn't count unless it paid bills. The look in my husband's eyes when I told him I lost a big client after months of chasing, like I should have known better than to try. He once said, "Not everything has to be a win, babe." But what he meant was, not everything has to be your win. I pulled out my journal, the one nobody knew existed, pages worn at the edges, entries written like whispered survival. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "If you shrink enough, people will forget you were ever tall." And I let that sit. Later that night, I called Danny. Her voice hadn't changed. Friendly, a little too fast, like she still hadn't shaken off the pace of city life. She told me she almost didn't send the clip. "I wasn't sure if it would hurt you, but you were always ahead of the curve. You just kept second-guessing yourself." We laughed about the campaign we ran back in college that got picked up by a national nonprofit. I was 20, fearless, and thought the world just needed more good ideas. She paused. "You kind of disappeared after the wedding, you know. We figured you gave it all up." I didn't have a comeback, because she was right. Somewhere along the way, I traded being seen for being safe, and safety became a leash. After the call, I sat at my desk, opened my content planner, and flipped through half-finished scripts, old notes, titles crossed out. One caught my eye. "You're not supposed to succeed." It was a draft I'd never filmed, written after one of those dinners where someone joked about how online isn't real work. I read it again. Every line stung. Every line was still true. That's when I knew. This wouldn't just be another video. This would be a reckoning. I mapped out 3 parts: the erasure, the fight to reclaim, the call for others to do the same. I wrote the first draft like a confession, raw, stripped of polish. This isn't revenge. This is resurrection. I hit save. Then, I uploaded a teaser clip to my page with the caption, "Coming Friday, for every woman they tried to silence." I stood to stretch and caught a glimpse of the scarf hanging behind my closet door. The same one I wore to that BBQ. I'd almost thrown it out, but stopped. That scarf had history. I'd bought it the day I got my first freelance check. Back when wins felt personal. Back when I still believed I could wear confidence without apology, I lifted it gently and laid it across my shoulders. They don't get to erase me. They don't own my story. I do. Moments later, my phone buzzed. Notifications. My teaser was being shared, quickly. A media page that once rejected my pitch had just reposted it. No caption, just my voice and that scarf. 2 nights after the teaser went live, I stood in front of the Vaughn family's house again. This time, it wasn't a barbecue. They were hosting a small fashion show fundraiser in the living room. All soft lighting, rented chairs, and murmurs of, "So proud of this family." I came alone. No one offered to walk in with me, and maybe that was for the best. I needed my mind sharp, not clouded by whispers. The dress I wore was mine, down to the seams. Designed it, chose the fabric, worked with the seamstress. I didn't tell anyone. Let them see it first. Let them ask. Priscilla met me at the door with a practiced smile. "Glad you made it. Hope it's not too much," she said, eyes flicking down to the dress, voice coated in that fake sweet syrup I'd grown used to. Inside, guests sipped wine, tapped phone screens, posed for selfies against a flower arch. Lights dimmed. Music started. Someone tapped a glass. The show was beginning. And just like that, the air changed. Like everyone knew their roles, and I was the one standing in the wrong scene. As the slideshow played behind the first model, my chest tightened. There it was, my dress. Not the one I wore, but the first one I ever submitted to their so-called charity line. On screen, lit beautifully, except in the corner, in soft cursive, a Vaughn Family Initiative project. I blinked hard. They didn't just forget my name, they erased it. The announcer beamed, praising Priscilla's visionary leadership for the initiative. I clenched the seat under me. The applause around the room felt sharp. Not claps, slaps. Again. I had learned to breathe through humiliation, smile like nothing cut deep. But this was a theft dressed up in pearls. They will steal your shadow and call it their own. The words echoed in my head. I'd once written that in my journal, back when I still believed it was just about work. Now I knew it was about survival. After the show, while people buzzed around canapes and congratulations, I slipped backstage. Priscilla was fixing her lipstick in a hand mirror, flanked by two cousins like security detail. "You knew that was mine," I said quietly. She didn't flinch, just blinked, slow. "Oh, I thought you were just the designer donor. Isn't that how it works?" "I sourced the fabric. I coordinated every stitch. You didn't even show up to the fittings." She smirked. "Sweetie, you don't understand branding. Credit is symbolic. It reflects the family's image." The audacity wasn't new, but her calm while saying it, that shook something loose in me. Before I could respond, I saw Marla, a local-style blogger I used to collaborate with, standing just outside the curtain, phone halfway lifted. Her eyes were wide, lips parted. She heard it, all of it. Priscilla followed my gaze, her smile faltering. "It's a misunderstanding," she added, suddenly flustered. I didn't say another word. I walked out. Later, during the QA panel, a man from the back asked, "Which designer collaborated on tonight's show?" Priscilla leaned forward, mic in hand. "Our in-house designer, my sister-in-law's partner, part of the family, you could say." No name, no mention of me. A low ripple went through the crowd. Whispers. One woman tilted toward another, eyes on me. I stayed seated, fists clenched in my lap. If I stood, it would look like drama. If I yelled, it would be emotional. Instead, I stared straight ahead, teeth pressing into each other. I was present, but they pretended I was invisible. Back home, I opened my design portfolio. First thing I did, I edited the credits on every image from the show. My name, front and center. Then I uploaded side-by-side shots to my socials. Caption: designed by me in support of Vaughn's charity. Grateful for the chance to contribute. Next time, I'll bring the mic. It got shared within minutes. One post from a local influencer tagged me with, "Underrated talent, should have been front row." I wasn't smiling, but I felt something close, not joy, something sharper, like steel. I opened a draft and typed, "Design is my voice when words are stolen." Just then, my phone buzzed. My husband. First time calling since the show ended. I picked up. "Hey," he said. "Someone asked me if you were the one behind the designs tonight." I stared out the window. "Ask them who they're giving credit to," I replied, and hung up. Morning light filtered through my home studio. My phone buzzed before coffee. On screen, a clip from last night's fundraiser, the dress, the banner, credited entirely to Vaughn Family Initiative. Below, reactions, surprise, applause. One share boasted, "Finally getting credit where it's due." But I ignored it. I couldn't let validation drown my purpose. Then a DM popped up. "You don't know me, but you need to see this." I tapped it. A screenshot appeared, group chat messages where Priscilla mocked charity bait, claimed my dress was borrowed, questioned if I even earned any of it. Fingers hovered. This wasn't shocking. It felt familiar. Insult, undermined, dismissed. Not behind closed doors, but laid bare in text. I forwarded it to my husband. He glanced, eyes flitting over words I'd rehearsed. "This again?" "People gossip," he sighed. That phrase cracked open everything. "Your sister's making a spectacle of me, and you expect me to be polite?" I asked. He murmured, "Family doesn't fight in public," his voice weary. I pressed, "You confuse passivity with peace." He didn't argue. He just stayed silent. At noon, I set up my phone and recorded. No fluff, no drama gimmicks. What they steal in silence, I reclaim in sunlight. I posted it with that caption. No more erasures, no more polite theft. Within minutes, messages flooded in, women sharing their own erasures, their guilt, their fear. A local media outlet messaged, "Can we interview you tomorrow?" My thumb hovered over the reply. I pressed send. By late afternoon, I asked to meet Priscilla at the cafe downtown. She arrived late, cool smile in place. "Another content idea?" she asked. I slid printed screenshots across the table, portfolios, email chains, receipts. I spoke this. "You may not respect me, but I built this. You don't get to repaint it and slap your name on it." She shrugged. "You're being dramatic." "It's just perception," my answer. "Perception is currency, and I just cut off your account." I rose and walked out before she could argue. That evening, I sat at my desk, rewrote every project outline, removed every familial tie from future plans. In legal documents, I renamed the business in my name only. On my blog, I wrote, "My family will always be mine, but my boundaries are no longer negotiable." I didn't want war. I wanted sovereignty. Later, I heard the front door open. My husband stood in the hall holding a printed copy of that post. His eyes were dull surprise. He read 3 lines, looked up at me. "So this is what you meant?" I didn't soften. "This is who I've always been," I said. "You just didn't look close enough." I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. I ignored it at first, but it kept going. I reached for it and blinked at the screen. Notifications stacked like bricks. My teaser clip was spreading. Local outlets had picked it up. Even the niche fashion blogs were chiming in. Then I saw it. A comment thread under one repost. A familiar name had tagged Priscilla. Is she really the designer behind that show, or just playing dress-up? The words weren't surprising. What hit harder was that Priscilla hadn't responded. Not to deny it. Not to defend me. Silence. Again. But this time, it was strategic. I opened my drafts, scrolled through everything I hadn't posted yet. I saw the restraint, the politeness, the places I dimmed myself to keep peace. I closed my laptop, stared at my own reflection in the black screen. They traded my shelf for their spotlight. I whispered to no one. "Let's see who shines brightest now." By 9 a.m., I was out of bed and pulling pieces from my closet. I didn't want pretty. I wanted presence. I chose the bold red blazer I'd stitched myself last fall, with a neckline that framed my collarbones like armor. I kept accessories minimal. Let the work speak. At my desk, I printed contracts, labeled each with a tab, organized the emails, copied timestamps, even printed screen recordings. I wasn't walking in defenseless this time. I rehearsed in the mirror, not just lines, but tone. Calm, grounded, unapologetic. Before leaving, I packed my tablet, my files, and a backup of everything on a flash drive. I stood still in front of the mirror, took a breath that didn't shake. "I did this," I said aloud. "No one else can take credit." The exhibit hall buzzed with chatter. Vendors, designers, sponsors, small press with notepads tucked under elbows. I spotted Priscilla before she spotted me. Hair curled, smile locked in place, she glided through the room shaking hands like she owned it. I walked in with my chin up. A few polite nods came my way, but no warmth, just hesitation. "She's the one from that post, right?" I heard someone whisper. I kept walking. Then came her voice, sharp as perfume. "Everyone, meet our family designer assisting tonight's show." Assisting. That word didn't sting, it ignited. I didn't react, not yet. At the panel, they placed me near the end. Priscilla, of course, sat front and center. A local news anchor moderated, light questions at first. Then came the one that flipped the air. "Who should we credit for tonight's featured designs?" Priscilla smiled, like she'd practiced it. "It was a family collaboration," she said, hands folded, a group effort of passion and support. That was it. I stood. The chair scraped against the tile. "I designed every piece," I said, voice clear. "If collaboration means omitting my name, I reject it." The room hushed, Heads turned. Cameras followed. Someone shouted, "Got proof?" I raised my tablet, swiped through designs, date-stamped drafts, contract signatures. I didn't need to yell. The truth sat on glass and paper. Priscilla's expression faltered for the first time, like she felt the ground shift beneath her. I didn't sit back down. When the panel ended, some people clapped, quietly, like it cost them something. Others just stared. Whispers trailed behind me as I walked backstage to gather my things. I wasn't shaken. Not anymore. My husband showed up late. His face said it all, uneasy, like someone expecting to clean up a mess. "You stirred the pot," he muttered low. I zipped my bag slowly. "I didn't stir," I said. "I just set it on fire." As I stepped out into the hallway, my phone buzzed again. A text. From Priscilla. "Don't forget who pays for everything." I read it once, then deleted it. I arrived early at the community center, before the sunlight drained from the sky and before any audience filed in. The hall smelled of freshly buffed floors and cheap carpet. I walked through the empty chairs, tapping edges, checking alignment, adjusting microphone stands. Light rigs hummed. I sensed tension behind the scenes, the way a storm gathers silent strength. Priscilla's team hovered near booths, quietly huddled over their phones. Whispers. A screen blinked with yesterday's coverage, captions like, "Behind the scenes at Vaughn fundraiser." My assistant, Hannah, slipped me a bottle of water. With her eyes lowered, she murmured, "They moved your designs to smaller tables." My chest squeezed. They reshuffled my presence again, trying to shrink my space, but I stood straighter. Their shift of furniture didn't shift the truth. I stepped into the hall with purpose. Guests were gathering. Reporters setting up cameras. Priscilla greeted a VIP with a handshake and overly practiced smile. I moved past, careful not to catch her eye. Someone asked a guest, "Did she really design that outfit from the show last week?" That sting hit, but I held composure. I wouldn't accept the role of assistant. I was the creative force. Then I saw it. The stage banner, massive, bold. Design by Vaughn Family Initiative. My name nowhere. My heart pounded. They'd erased me again, this time in public. I walked toward the banner silently, edged one corner, and exposed a faint watermark underneath. Designed by Elwanda Ray. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Priscilla's expression flickered, her composure cracking momentarily. I didn't shout. I just turned, stepped up to the mic, ready to speak my truth. When Priscilla presented me an award, she called it a community award and referred to me as a support role. The plaque read, "To our contributing volunteer." I accepted it on stage, smiled, thanked them. But inside, the label stung. Praise that camouflaged insult had always been her trick. She used it to remind me of my place. But I resolved then, I would no longer carry that title. I took the mic again. "Tonight was not about charity," I said, voice clear. "It was about credit, and I deserve mine." Slides flickered behind me, revealing stolen drafts, early sketches, emails showing process. The audience leaned forward. I gave them the narrative, the theft, the gift betrayal, the hidden watermark. Priscilla tried to interrupt. I lifted a hand. "Don't speak over me. You did that too often before." I turned off the mic and stepped down. Silence held the room. Backstage, the energy shifted. People gathered around me, some with tears, some offering congratulations. A local designer asked for collaboration. A blogger asked for an interview. Then Priscilla stormed in. "You embarrassed us." My voice steady. "You extinguished my name so many times. Tonight I lit it again." My husband appeared in the doorway. Pride tugged at his features for the first time. I saw it, but didn't look away. I stepped outside into the dusky air. The buzz of the crowd still echoed within. Hannah approached, her voice low. "They just forwarded your clip to national media." The tide had turned. The minute I stepped through the ballroom doors, I could feel the air shift. Too many eyes. Too much light. The chandeliers sparkled like they knew secrets. Every breath I took was deliberate, measured, controlled. Flashbulbs flared like tiny storms as reporters turned their lenses toward me. I didn't flinch. I'd spent too many nights alone preparing for this. Priscilla stood near the edge of the stage, arms folded like she owned the room. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to your night," she said. I stared at her a second longer than polite, then stepped forward. The floor under my heels felt solid, real. I wasn't floating through this like a dream. I was walking into a reckoning. A hush swept through the crowd, like everyone could feel something was about to tilt. I thought, they've been writing my story without me. Tonight I'm taking the pen back. Priscilla took the stage with her signature calm, lips tight, hair perfect, tone full of warmth for the crowd and frost for the truth. "This night is a celebration of legacy," she said, "of what the Vaughn name has built here in Bentonville. These visuals, the style, the message, all born of a unified vision led by this family." I stood near the curtain's edge, watching her as she bathed in credit that wasn't hers. Her words slid across the room like perfume. Some nodded, others whispered. A woman near the front leaned toward her husband and whispered, "That's not what the designer told the papers." I caught that. It pierced, but I didn't let it show. I folded the shame back into my spine. I waited. I'd timed every second. She closed her speech, beaming like she'd won something. Then I stepped forward. Not fast. Just enough to cut clean through the tension she'd built. I stood at the mic and let a beat pass. "What you just watched," I said, "was stolen. I saw people lean in. They hadn't expected that." I clicked the remote in my hand, and the side screen lit up. Images. The gala visuals, side by side with screenshots from my personal files. My watermark on each. Timestamps. Edits. A flicker swept across the main banner behind Priscilla. Someone backstage triggered the override. "By Elwanda Ray" appeared just below the Vaughn branding. Audible gasps. Cameras whipped around to catch my face. I kept going. "I created this. Every inch of it. And what you've been sold tonight is a copy with the labels switched." Priscilla flinched, whispered something to a woman at her side. I didn't stop. "This ends tonight. The pretending. The theft. The silence." My voice was calm. Too calm. That's what made people listen. That's when the power tilted. I left the stage for a moment. Backstage, I handed out folders. Originals. Full contract copies with my signature and dates. A few bloggers flipped pages, eyes wide. "These are the receipts," I told them. "Ownership, proof." I walked back out and took the mic again. "This is not about ego," I said. "It's about being erased. These credits. They're not favors. They're my life's work." Priscilla opened her mouth to interrupt, but I raised my hand without even looking at her. "Let the truth speak first." The room held its breath. Then, applause. It started small, then grew. My husband stood near the back, hands clapping slowly at first, then firm. I saw it in his eyes. He finally saw me again. I turned toward Priscilla. No smile. Just a long, level look. And I walked off. Cameras followed like shadows. The air outside hit me like a release valve. Questions flew. Press, microphones, phones recording. I didn't dodge. "Credit where credit is due," I said simply. Jolette and Melora came beside me, firm and visible. I didn't need their words. Their presence was loud enough. Behind the glass doors, I saw Priscilla standing there, pale, still, alone. Her circle had cracked. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. My interview was airing, early. The view count? Exploding. I exhaled. The fight was no longer hidden. I'd pulled it out into the open. That changed everything. Then the screen changed. A push notification. "Law firm files cease and desist against Vaughn Family Initiative." I stared at it a second. Let it sink in. Then I tucked the phone away. Tomorrow they'll beg me to negotiate. Tonight they just fear me. I sat in my new office that morning, hands wrapped around a warm mug, light pouring in from the tall windows. I didn't rush. I didn't feel the weight I used to. The room smelled faintly of lemon oil and paper. Fresh, unfinished. On the desk, the local paper lay open. There was my name, not in a footnote, not under someone else's shadow, but in bold. A feature, not a scandal. My journal lay beside it, pages folded, a pen half uncapped, scribbled in the margins. Grace, not permission. And underneath that, thank you, even for what didn't work. I took another sip. My hands weren't shaking. That meant something. Across from me, a framed photo of my kids stared back, both of them caught mid-laugh. I reached to straighten it, not because it needed it, but because I wanted to. They weren't distractions anymore. They were the reason I knew what mattered. I looked out the window, thought, healing doesn't come from apologies you never get. It's what you give yourself. 1 week before that morning, the past had shown up, uninvited, but not unwelcome. Priscilla stood at my office door, not a hair out of place, but something in her posture was different. She didn't come in right away, just stood there, like the threshold was a test she wasn't sure she'd pass. "Can I speak with you?" she asked. I nodded. She sat down, smoothed her coat, then looked me dead in the eye. "I owe you an apology," she said. Her voice had edges. She couldn't help that. But the words, they landed. "I was wrong about you," she added. "About all of it." I didn't flinch. I didn't reach across the desk. I just listened. And when she was done, I said, "Thank you for coming." That was it. No dramatic closure, no handshake. I added, "I know who I am. You don't get to define that anymore." She looked at me for a beat, then nodded, quietly got up, and left. I watched her back disappear down the hallway. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. That afternoon, I walked into a small community center just 10 minutes from my new place. Folding chairs, water jugs, a few flyers, nothing flashy, just real. The women gathered weren't strangers. They were versions of me from 5, 10, even 20 years ago. I stood in front of them with no slides, no presentation, just words. "You may not control all the events that happen to you," I read from a small card, "but you can decide not to be reduced by them." Maya Angelou knew. One woman asked, "When did you know it was time to speak up?" I didn't hesitate. When staying silent started hurting more than their disapproval. That's what cracked it open. Heads nodded. Eyes welled. Afterward, they hugged me, held on longer than I expected. I didn't pull away. My story wasn't bleeding anymore. It was a bridge. Later that week, I watched myself on TV. The full interview aired nationwide, midday slot, clean edits, no clickbait, just me, sitting across from the anchor, telling the truth. "Success isn't just titles or numbers," I said. "It's surviving what tried to break you and still choosing love." The emails started rolling in before the segment even ended. Then the letters, real ones, with stamps. Women from Ohio, Texas, small towns I've never stepped foot in. They wrote about silence, about resilience, about walking away from people who swore they'd never make it without them. A producer from the network sent a message. "Would you consider a follow-up documentary?" I smiled at that. Not because I needed more cameras, but because this time, I'd own the lens. The next morning, I was in my garden behind the office. The rosemary had survived the heat. I trimmed it with quiet hands. A draft email sat in my inbox, timed to send 1 year from that day. Subject: Remember this piece. That's what I was chasing now. Not applause, not validation, just peace. My phone rang. My daughter's face popped up. "Guess what?" she said, out of breath and excited. I listened, laughed, asked questions. We talked like we hadn't skipped a day. I hung up and sat on the back step, let the warmth hit my legs. They'd wanted me to disappear, to shrink. But I found a louder voice in kindness, not in fury. In truth, not in shame. Back inside, I looked at the suitcase by the door, neatly packed. The ticket tucked inside the front zipper, NYC. I didn't know what waited there, but I knew one thing for sure. The story isn't over. It's just moving to a bigger stage.